Hello, you malty maudlin malt sippers. I'm Ralphie and welcome to the Bothy. Welcome to Ralphie Review 925, and a big thank you for the malt mention to Timothy T, and who basically provides the malt mention that we need to get the malt review done. And in this case, it is a single malt whisky review as part of a short series of independent bottlings, because not that long ago, in fact just recently, I was doing a series of reviews of widely available, very accessible single malts, some of which were good and others were most certainly not. So any illusion that you might have that Scotch whisky is unsurpassable in terms of desirability and quality, well, think again, malt mates. Because whisky is all a matter of taste. Absolutely. And the taste that matters the most is your taste, because you're the one spending the money buying the product. And it's quite good when you're starting out in whisky to take a bottle or two off the supermarket shelves or buy something cheap from Amazon as it's coming up to the end of the year, to Christmas time and New Year. It's very easy to do these days. Or you may go into a specialist whisky shop and buy a bottle of something smoky or peaty just to try it out, to see if you've got the desire for it. And it's not unusual in the whisky scene that you've got people whose tastes are specifically for bourbon matured single malts, or perhaps sherry matured single malts, or perhaps they don't like either of those. They just go specifically for the peat monsters, in particular like Lagavulin, Ardbeg and Laphroaig, because tastes can be quite selective. And when we start out, we want to have as broad a field as possible to ease our experience in gently, so that we do not shock our senses and sensitiveness to shock with an absolute bomb blast of a whisky. Well, for example, like this. This is why you leave independent bottlings till you've got some experience. Because particularly when they're bottled at high strength, and particularly when they are unconventional, unedited, unsanitized versions of a whisky, they can be hugely confusing and it can put you off. So I'm really doing this review for the more experienced malt mate, someone who has a few years of experience with standard malts and wants to kind of move on and explore. It's as simple as that. Explore the other permutations of whisky. Now, let's explore this permutation of Caol Ila. I'm sure you'll agree, the colour is as natural as you're going to get. Caramel E150 does not produce that beautiful light straw colour. It just doesn't. It produces a constant specific colour of kind of toffee-ish brown with a bit of an orange glow to it. So let me introduce this Watt Whisky Caol Ila. Single malt Scotch whisky, distilled at Caol Ila Distillery, aged 10 years, bottled at 58.2%. 58.2. So it's pretty strong stuff. And produce of Scotland, as you know, and on the back label, a nice, straightforward, practical back label giving you nothing but useful information, because they know who the market is. Their market is the malt specialist, someone who will pay a premium to get a premium experience. So, a hogshead selected by Mark and Kate Watt, distilled 2010, bottled 2021, one of 326 bottles. Now that's implying basically that it's from one cask, I'm going to presume if they'd said single cask on it, that would have been enormously helpful. But they don't actually specify this. Now there's some little tiny writing here, so I do need the steampunker. It's a good thing I've got it. I bought it in eBay about 15 years ago and I've been using it ever since. They describe this whisky as medicinal, creamy, wet ash, pear skins and salted licorice. Right. I wouldn't describe it as that. The nearest I would, medicinal, yes, I wouldn't go any further than that. I will articulate my own impression of it shortly. From whatwhiskey.com, so you can go and visit the website because it's stated in the back label. This bottling is non-chill filtered and natural colour. Hear that? This bottling is non-chill filtered and natural colour. That's what we really need to hear. This is confirming that this is an integrity product. I believe it is probably a single cask, but it doesn't specify in the label that it's a single cask. And there's not a lot of writing, so if it did say it, I would have noticed. Incidentally, I just want to bring this into your field of vision. This is the box that the whisky comes in. See that? Simple, plain, rigid, cardboard box, practical, inexpensive, functional, and kind to the environment. This is a box that you can actually recycle because it's not covered with disingenuous, pretentious bullshit like some other boxes are. Having said that, American whiskies seem to suffer no adverse effects whatsoever from not selling the majority of bourbons in cardboard boxes, so it's no big deal. There are certain independent bottlers like James Eady, for example, that don't use boxes, or Dramore, another example. Frankly, there's no need for it. So what have we got here? Well, as soon as you put your nose to this whisky, you're getting something that's lemon sorbet, slightly lemon meringue pie, but quite bitter on the nose. And you notice immediately the Caol Ila phenolic component, that bonfiriness, that sort of twig smoke. And stick your nose in again, and it seems quite reserved. It's a kind of locked up nose. Bear in mind that this is 58 point what percent? 58.2%. This is, when it comes to the taste, let me advise you, if you want to avoid an attack of the heebie-jeebies and a course of hiccups, take a little sip. I'll be with you in a minute. It's like a bomb going off in a limoncello factory. The alcohol explodes across your tongue. It numbs your tongue. Literally, it will numb your tongue. If this was your first experience of Caol Ila, you may be requiring a first aid kit. Let's add some water. It absolutely, see that, 1 teaspoon, 2 teaspoons, 10 millilitres of water, just for starters. I will add more. Adding water comes with experience. Older whiskies, less. Younger whiskies, a little bit more. Bourbon cask matured whiskies, more. Sherry cask whiskies, bit less. It comes down to personal experience, and you tailor the whole procedure to suit your palate. If you choose not to add any water at all, it's entirely up to you. You've bought and paid for the bottle. It is yours to do what you wish to do. But having said that, you're just going to end up with a numshocked palate because I'm Ralphie in the bothy and I'm just telling you what you need to know. Simples. I've added 2 spoonfuls of water. Generous amount of water. Very soon a little Scotch mist will start to appear in that glass. So a wee gentle stroly-poly round the glass. I was about to do a shaky but I caught myself just in time. Oh, the nose alone is much more manageable. Lemon meringue pie, grapefruit, fresh banana, spent matches. You know when you strike a match and then you blow it out and then you get a wee whiff of smoke and the smell of smoke's slightly sulphury? There is that. It's sulphur in a positive way. This isn't the over-sulphuring of sherry cask sulphur. This is the natural spirit-derived sulphuring. And it's absolutely fine. It's part of the experience and nothing to worry or complain about. Much more fresh fruit, fresh citrus fruit, including the rind, because it's got that bitterness. You get a touch of it in the nose, but it's when you come to taste it. Still very intense. We're getting the medicinal notes. Oh, carbolic. Natural sulphur. Super intense lemon. Super intense grapefruit. Both together. A touch of lemon meringue pie or lemon curd, you might call it, lemon cheese. I'm adding another spoonful of water. I've done this before, malt mates. I'm not doing. I know what I'm doing. I'm not about to drown it. Promise. There is so much flavour locked up in this single malt. This is about as intense a Caol Ila as you're ever going to encounter. There is no way in a month of Sundays that an official bottling from Diageo would ever allow Caol Ila to be this expressive. No chance. They just wouldn't do it. This is why we need the independent bottlers. Just before I forget, Caol Ila is one of the most accessible, available, affordable peated whiskies that you can buy from independent bottlers. If you're looking for Bowmore, you may as well forget it. Bowmore very rarely appears from the independent bottlers, and when it does, it is outrageously expensive, no matter what the quality. Ardbeg, same story. Laphroaig, well, you get that under another name. It's called Williamson. But if you want to know more about that, you'll have to tune in to Ralphie Review 926, which will be along in just about a week's time. We've given this a few minutes now. Extra water, huge amount of water. You're thinking, hey Ralphie, can you even taste the whiskey anymore? Well, actually, yes. There is almost 2 bottles worth of whiskey in this one bottle. It is so concentrated. When whiskey matures in a cask, if it's a good cask, it amplifies the signature from the still as part of the maturation. The sign of a bad cask, a stale cask, a dying cask, is when it actually reduces and starts to kill off the signature and identity of a single malt character during the process of maturation. Please bear that in mind. It's more lemony, much more manageable nose. Beautiful smokiness coming out now that wasn't previously visible. It was too covered up with the strength of the alcohol. Flavour, because this is where we're getting access to the flavour now, rather than the pure condensed phenolic lemony nip. Much better. Crispy clean. Super bright flavours. The sensation range is very punchy. The sweetness is minimal, but it is in there. The sourness is very dominant, along with the citrus. Sour and citrus. very much interlocked. There is a distinct vein of bitterness in the development, becoming more emphasised as you go through the development towards the finish. The finish is more or less the quietest part of the event, but it's still pretty noisy in terms of flavour. This is a huge Caol Ila. Huge. And anyone trying this as the first whisky will not get their fingers burnt by it. They'll get their tongue well and truly burnt by it. Because this is not normal. As regards the quality and identifying the good independent bottlings, this is something I'm going to cover just shortly in Ralphie Review 925 Extras. I'm going to help you pin down where the best bottlings are to be found, because like official bottlings, you do get bad ones. Be quite aware of that, and I don't want you wasting your money. Look at the Scotch mist descending in this glass with that beautiful colour. What a magnificent colour. That is a colour that caramel cannot buy. This is a colour that connoisseurs understand and appreciate, because it can only be natural. Final taste. Very zesty. Lemon rind, bitter. Bitter, sour, minimal sweet. Kind of tangy, very tangy. Like concentrated lemon cough lozenges mixed with absinthe and some fire and brimstone from the deeper levels of hell. In a very enjoyable, pleasant ratio. Right, I think that'll do enough for my tasting notes. I think that's more or less summed it up. And this is not a normal Caol Ila. It's a challenging one, but also very rewarding. The sort of Caol Ila you find from independent bottlers that you may be less aware of. There's quite a few recently come onto the market, hoping to make a decent living from it, and struggling with all the duties they have to pay. But this is 88 out of 100. It's a malt mark, and this is a damn good single malt. A word of warning though. You really need to know how to add the water, when to add the water, how long to leave the glass, how long to let it open up and settle down before you find the bliss point. That only comes with experience. I can share my experience, but the real experience that matters is your experience, because your experience will be tailored to suit your desires, your palate, and the best return that you feel you're getting for your investment in the whisky you're buying. End of. One last sip before I go. Whew. My ears are starting to burn. There's a kind of savoury biscuitiness coming through now, and a real clarity, even more clarity, to the signature of the Caol Ila itself. The phenolic is expressed so beautifully that it's the sort of thing, if you're a standard Caol Ila fan of the 12-year-old, you might want to buy a bottle of this and just put it in the back of your shelf to open in a few years' time, when you feel the moment's come and that you're ready. And what fun you're going to have, because what you'll do is you'll pour a glass of the standard Caol Ila so you can put them side by side. And then what you'll do is you'll have a third glass and you start blending them together, and you'll create a new malt, a new Caol Ila, which has never been experienced by anybody before except yourself. I'm Ralphie from the Bothy. Join me soon for Ralphie Review 925 Extras, in which I will be talking about tracing and tracking your independent bottlings. See you soon, malt mates.